The hand arrived without warning. It was somewhat human, like in appearance, but its skin looked like snow and rotting flesh. It had nails, no colossal claws, which were oh so sharp. They were like gigantic needles used to sew the world together, and it was a great horrific thing, and my house sat in its palm. I know this is true. It was like a god, in that most could not see it, and that I truly do believe it could destroy me. So I prayed to it. It showed up on Tuesday, June 6th. I went off to work the next morning. When I returned home, there it was, the gigantic hand wrapped tightly around my shitty yellow house. I felt uneasy looking at it, but I was not surprised. It seemed as natural as it would be there, as my own hands should be at the end of my wrists, and I think now it was influence. Even more strangely, no one else took notice of it. It seemed to be entirely beyond their seeing, beyond what looked like is accepted as truth. Its strange thumb blocked my doorway, and as I approached, it moved slightly, allowing me entry, only to shift back into place once I had closed the door again. I was uneasy that evening. I had the urge to contact the police or anyone at hand to silence it in my mind without me knowing. I tried to turn on the TV in my bedroom, but there was nothing but static. I attempted to watch some videos on my laptop, only to find no available Wi-Fi. Upon journeying to my kitchen for a late-night snack, I found all the food was missing, even though the power of the creature, if you could call it that, was too strong. I didn't know the terror that I would be faced with. I shrugged away at these small oddities and went to sleep. My alarm clock went off at 7 in the following morning. I turned it off and quickly got dressed with a lot of time to spare due to the lack of breakfast. I intended to get to work early and fill out some paperwork I had gotten behind in. When I went to leave the doorway, not only to be blocked by the monstrosity, but the thumb had actually torn through the oak door and was now scratching with its gigantic talon against my ceiling. I tried to push past it, but the touch of its skin and I fell to the floor, convulsing. It was a painful electric buzz ran through my body. I picked myself up from the ground and returned to my most mindlessly to my bed. The bedroom was open, door was open, and it slammed shut without no much as touching it as soon as I had entered. I collapsed face first into my mattress. I understood then. The fear filled me and I accepted reluctantly. In that moment I would soon be dead. I didn't move from that spot until well past sunset. I walked from room to room, looking for an escape. I double-checked for my phone service, but I was without any means of contact in the outside world. Days passed and there was no change. I still had tap water to live off of. Even it tasted very bitter. It was difficult to keep down. I was in hell in that house, within the hand. I don't know how much time passed. I grew thin. I grew insane. There were points where the only thing that was real to me was the hand. I worshipped it, but I built altars of the rat bones, and my body was dying. I could feel it with every breath. I was beginning to absorb into the hand. I would sometimes crawl on all fours to the cold, damp basement and sit for hours in total darkness. There I could barely feel its playful fingers picking apart my mind. I went down into the darkness so many times, each and every time I was prepared to die there, and my misery. Eventually, when I had survived long in the past capabilities of any human, I concluded I would never die, at least not in my house. This was inescapable and insubversible. I accepted my resemblance of happiness, or normality, I had never experienced was over now. With the hand won, I think it is what it is, have been trying to do is destroy me. Even briefly before I made my escape, I could not ever dreamed of doing so. One night I found myself unable to sleep in my own bedroom. The hand was projecting visions in my mind. I can't bring myself to reveal the specifics. My captivator's strength was too powerful in this part of the house. I took my comforter and flashlight and walked down to the basement, trying to find some sleep, even if it means shivering for hours on a cold concrete floor. I made my way down the creaky basement steps and found myself in an almost empty, dust-filled room. There was one object in the room which remained from my mother. It was a large chest of drawers which had been painted white by the fantasy family friend before my grandmother was even born. I was only a child, and when my mother left it as well as left her house for me in the will. The paint was chipped badly now. It looked as if a little breeze could knock it off to pieces. Still, it was one of my mother's only valuable possessions. I had been taking special care to keep it since making a home of my own. It had stayed in that exact same spot for 4 years, before the hand had just arrived. It would just appear that on the night I'm telling you about. I turned to face the chest of drawers and pointed the beam of the flashlight in its direction. In that split second, I noticed the dim glint of the metal of the space between the antique and the floor which I sat on. I did something which I had not done in a long time. I allowed myself to hope. I hoped that I knew the shape of the color. I hoped that can still had its intended contents. I hoped that my mother's leftover supply of kerosene would pull me through. All that hope filled with that energy and compelled me to jump forward like a crazed animal. That chest of drawers fell to the ground as I slammed onto it. As it would be expected, it broke into many pieces. There on the ground was a black metal, now coated in rust. The black label was yellow and barely legible. After a moment of intense scrutiny, knew for a certain fact that it can be indeed red kerosene. I shook it to check to see if it had been emptied, and it was almost full. I dashed upstairs and grabbed a box of matches from my drawer in my kitchen. I ran from room to room, throwing the liquid on almost every flammable surface. Finally, when I was convinced the house would surely burn, I poured the remainder of the bottle over my head. I felt so alive despite the cold and the destruction I was bringing to myself. I reached into my pocket of sweatpants and took out the box of matches. There were about a dozen matches. The first flew, I went high ship slipped into my fingers and sunk into the beneath the wooden floor, as if it did not exist at all. I knew that the hand was fighting back. I concentrated as much as I could to keep the matches from my grips, tightening them as quickly as possible. This is the only led to 5 or 6 more simply snapping between my digits. Eventually I looked in the box in my left hand, and I only saw one small wooden match remaining. "Fuck," I said out loud, before taking a deep breath, closing my eyes as I saw the final match calmly lit against the box's strike pad. I felt the heat, and my hand quickly bent down to set the carpet on fire. It burned, and so I did. The house filled with smoke, ablaze and crumbled. The fire consumed most of my flesh. I somehow was still awake and alive when the wall came crashing down in a small room to my left. I saw my daylight and freedom. Rising with force I wasn't aware of, possessed, and I stumbled my way out of the nightmare. My body collapsed onto the pavement outside. The flames which were consuming my flesh were immediately extinguished by a harsh wind. I could hear the house falling into itself behind me. I still couldn't bring myself to look back. The agony of what happened was far too fresh in my mind. They have me in a small hospital room. It smells like detergent and death. Maybe it was just me. I try not to look at myself much. It's not a pretty sight. There's a calendar on my wall by my window. It says Wednesday, June the 7th. It has been less than a day since I first saw the hand. The doctors say my body is so starved, it's so uncertain that I can recover. The burns didn't exactly help my chances, but I don't really care about any of this, really. What I care about is what's outside the window. The hands. There were so many of them. Almost everywhere that one has to think. No one sees the tough, though that is, unless they want to be seen. What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video. And I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Miss Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, stay pretty.